They say all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy. But there are a lucky few who get to play at work and make it pay. In fact, Apple Computer was put on the map by a couple of young men employing just such a strategy. Now a similar story may be unfolding near Dallas. Byron Harris reports.
id Software, founded in 1991 by John Romero, John Carmack, Adrian Carmack, and Tom Hall, now finished with their previous title, Catacombs 3D, and released from the contract with Softisk, would partner up with Apogee Software to create what would become the blueprint for the FPS genre.
It's three-dimensional. It's texture map. It's Wolfenstein, one of the hottest-selling computer games in the world.
Wolfenstein 3D puts the player in the shoes of an American spy of Polish descent, V.J. Blazkowicz, as he escapes Castle Wolfenstein, thwarting a plan to create an undead army and eventually killing Adolf Hitler himself. I stated in the previous video that Romero brought up the idea to test out the new 3D engine Carmack was working on by creating a remake of the original Castle Wolfenstein that was developed by Muse Software in 1981. The 3D remake would also have another unexpected inspiration, the yellow hockey puck-shaped shoeing machine.
Well, they come as if from outer space in a variety of weird guises. Defender, Pac-Man, asteroids. To fans, they represent a challenge. But to critics, as Terry Drinkwater reports, they are a menace.
In the book I'm Too Young to Die, John Romero states in the foreword that Pac-Man was the catalyst for Wolfenstein 3D. During 1977, the gaming industry experienced a crash before the famous one in 1983. And it was due to an overabundance of Pong machines. It was also the beginning of the arcade era of gaming. The market was saturated with black and white games that were limited in scope. Some stood out like Asteroids and Space Invaders, but when Pac-Man stumbled onto the scene in 1980, it brought bright colors, amazing sound, and a game design that hadn't been seen in the industry up to that point, becoming an international obsession and showing John Romero that a game can come out of nowhere and change the world. Naturally, he would want to innovate on the formula, quoted to say, Wolfenstein 3D was going to be another great maze game, this time with guns out in front. The team at id were such big fans of the game that they had their very own machine at the office while creating Wolfenstein, and hid a secret level in the game that was Pac-Man with the original song, Ghost, and even some Nazis thrown in. Initially, due to trademark issues, the Wolfenstein name seemed to be impossible to acquire, so the team came up with multiple alternative titles, getting in contact with Wolfenstein developer Silas Warner in hopes of obtaining the rights. They learned that Muse Software had shut down in 1986, and the rights to Wolfenstein were sold to someone in Michigan. The team was able to find the rights holder and purchased the trademark around mid-April of 1992 for $5,000. Thus, they were free to name the game Wolfenstein 3D. The concept of the game met with instant approval from Scott Miller of Apogee, since he considered id Software as his star developer. He guaranteed them a $100,000 payment for the project. Mark Rain, id's probationary president, also sold the idea of doing a retail release to FormGen, overcoming the publisher's concerns over the content of the game and putting id in the unique position of selling simultaneously on the shareware and retail markets. The project began development in December of 1991. John Carmack would continue to improve the 3D engine used in Hovertank, and within a month, added features such as support for doors and decorative non-wall objects, but the main focus would be on the engine running smoother and faster with higher resolution graphics. Hall and Romero designed the aesthetics and gameplay, Romero's goal being to mold down Nazis with the suspense and intensity of storming a Nazi bunker full of SS soldiers equipped with straightforward lethal weapons and blood like never before seen in games. He also composed the basic storyline. Hall would handle the level design, adding health and ammo pickups as well as treasure that would add to your overall score at the end of an episode. Later in development, id would move the company to Mesquite, Texas, near where Apogee was located. Miller would then increase their royalty rates to 50% just for moving closer. Like, this dude really loves id. Bobby Prince, the lead composer for the game, moved into the office temporarily to record sound effects. Adrian Carmack would move out to get away from the noise, and id fired Mark Rain and brought back Jay Wilbur as probationary president. As the game was nearing its completion, FormGen would contact the company yet again with concerns over the violent and shocking content featured in it. Id's response to this? Bloody wall textures, corpses, screams and cries in German, along with the iconic death cam that would show a replay of the death of the final boss of an episode.
Son of a duck!
Oh, and they added the entire Nazi Party anthem to the opening screen. Needless to say, FormGen did not release the original Wolfenstein at retail. While all this lunacy was going on, John Carmack would add the secret walls that Hall had been pushing for months to implement, but that Carmack had rejected for technical reasons. Hall also added cheat codes and wrote the backstory for the game, that from what I can surmise, became the prequel episodes. Finally, after a month of playtesting, in the early morning of May 5th, 1992, the first episode was completed and uploaded to shareware.
31-year-old Scott Miller and 29-year-old George Broussard, who own Apogee, discovered a breakthrough in marketing computer games. They sell directly to the public. But first, they give away part of the games they sell through a service called shareware.
We take a larger game and break it into several smaller parts, and we put the first part out in shareware so that people can try it and see if they like it. And if they do, they can order the rest of them back through us.
It only took a few more weeks to complete the remaining episodes. The development time was around 6 months, with a grand total cost of $25,000 or $53,000 if you're taking inflation into account, to cover the team's rent, $750 per month salaries, as well as $6,500 for the computer John Carmack used to create the engine, and the $5,000 they spent for the Wolfenstein trademark. The game was released on shareware the day the first episode was completed. Apogee sold the game in bundles. While episode 1 was free and acted as a demo for people to try out, they would sell a bundle for episodes 1 through 3 for $35 and another bundle including episodes 4 through 6 for $50. According to co-founder of Apogee, Scott Miller,
95% of our sales was for the full 6 episodes.
And within the first month, the company had earned $250,000.
$250,000 the first month on a shareware game? What?
A few weeks later, after the purchase date, the customers would receive their copy for MS-DOS. id did not expect the reception they received for the game, only estimating a $60,000 profit for the first month. But they were roughly selling 4,000 copies a month by mail order, and by the end of 1992, it was the top-selling shareware game for that year. A little bit after Wolfenstein's release, a Japanese company called Imagineer contacted id Software to have them port the game over to Super Nintendo and offered $100,000 in advance.
Okay, let's do that port too. Like, this is insane.
As you can imagine, with Nintendo being a family-friendly company and all, this game would have to be heavily censored. id ignored the project for around 7 to 8 months and finally decided to hire someone for the job. Rebecca Heineman would be in charge of the port, but also not making any progress. They all frantically learned to create SNES games while following Nintendo's policies. The original release on DOS was not sold in Germany, obviously due to its content matter. Nintendo, however, did want to release the game there, so all the Nazi paraphernalia was removed from the game, including the famous voice clips. All blood was turned green initially, but then it was just removed outright. But most interestingly, all of the German shepherds were replaced with rats, and according to Rebecca, when they were finally finishing off the port, Nintendo would have them remove the rats' tongues because they looked too similar to blood for them. Rebecca stating that
the censors just made our lives miserable. So we had to do several revisions before finally Nintendo said, okay, you could ship this.
Okie dokie.
Wolfenstein 3D is considered the grandfather of the first-person shooter genre. I've been interested in the games from the reboot series. No, not you. For many years now, and even though I was excited to play the game, I was also worried that the game would be a bit of a drag to get through due to just how old it is. So let's find out if those thoughts were justified, shall we? For a game from 1991, the graphics were on par with some of its competitors. They made sure that the presentation for the game was exactly how they wanted it, using raycasting, the predecessor to ray tracing, to add lighting effects, and having Adrian Carmack add violent animations for the enemies being shot, as well as hand-drawing all enemies and objects in the game at 8 different angles. Featuring a maze-like design for its maps, the levels themselves would range from castle-looking environments, cozy indoor wooden areas, a literal wall of shit, and trippy purple alien vines, with shit thrown at them. What the hell's going on here? For the most part, the level design of the game wasn't a problem, except for on certain floors where the map was either just too convoluted or had the most tedious layout where you can have an enemy quickly jump out at you and take like 60% of your health, like this little shit right here.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, the closer the proximity to BJ the enemy is, the more damage you will receive. I will say BJ's face changing based on the damage was always pretty dope though. Due to the maze-like design, making the levels was a chore, and Romero had to push Hall to finish the maps by promising him that he would be able to buy himself a brand new car. Despite its age, the gameplay for the most part has aged like fine wine. It is quick, snappy, and satisfying.
John had programmed the engine so well that on a CRT monitor with a VGA card, it went 70 frames a second. It was super fast. And then we put mouse movement in there, and holding the second mouse button, you could strafe unbelievably fast, faster than in any game. Still, it was insane.
Shooting Nazis feels exhilarating, from guards which are clueless most of the time, as you peek out of doors to one-shot them from the back.
Oh.
The SS soldiers, which are a bit tankier and seem like they really want to get cancelled before dying.
What did he say?
Like they don't already have reasons to be. They're pet German shepherds, which really pains me to hurt, but like they were really trying to attack my ass the whole game. Wait a minute.
Me? You think this is funny? In a cosmic sort of way, yes. Well, Mr. Funny Man, is this how you get your sick kicks? What? It's just an ordinary crabby... Oh my goodness!
These cyborg Nazis that are actually supposed to be undead Nazis, but come on, look at them. That's a robot. Fuck them, by the way. You got your regular pistol-wielding officers, the bosses that all look like shit brick houses. Oh, how could I forget Goth Hitler? Thanks to newer ports, it is easy to get a modern keyboard and mouse setup for the controls. Thank God, because I can't imagine playing like this. Using WASD for movement, the mouse itself to control the camera, the left mouse button to shoot, the right for strafing, and the number keys to change weapons. Speaking of, Wolfenstein features 4 unique weapons: the knife assigned to number 1, the pistol to 2, machine gun to 3, and the chain gun at 4. The player always starts with the knife and pistol at the beginning of an episode. The pistol is a nice go-to weapon for most situations. Get used to using it a lot, because every time you die, it resets your weapons. The machine gun is obtained by either finding it in the level or having it drop by, which is the weapon I use for like 85% of the playthrough. And of course the chain gun, which tears through every enemy in the game easily, but also uses up ammo very quickly when sprayed. Then there's the knife. Yeah, you have a better shot of surviving slinging the shit from the walls at enemies. Music and sound effects were done by Commander Keen composer Bobby Prince. To make guns sound exciting, he would use the aid of a 16-bit sampler keyboard and cassette recorder, composing realistic sounds from a shooting range in addition to Foley sounds. Scott Miller, along with the development team, would voice the enemies, basing some of the shouts on the original game. The sound design in general is great considering what was available at the time, except the nuke being dropped when a door slammed shut.
Oh my... What was that, dude? What the hell was that?
Prince composed a fantastic soundtrack, the first of many to come. But out of all of the songs on this one, Funk You stands out to me, and it plays in my head every once in a while to this day. Wolfenstein 3D consists of 6 playable episodes, each one focused on a different objective. Episode 1, titled Escape from Castle Wolfenstein, has BJ Blazkowicz captured and imprisoned at the notorious castle after trying to uncover rumors of Operation Eisenfaust. You must navigate your way through the castle, killing Nazis until reaching the exit, where you will fight Hans Gross. After defeating him, you escape and meet up with the underground that inform you about some hideous human experiments around Castle Hohammer. In episode 2, titled Operation Eisenfaust, Dr. Schaubs is trying to create an undead army for the Nazis. You travel to Hohammer and put an end to his scheme, standing over his fat, evil, swollen, putrid body. That's literally what it says on the line. But even though their plans for an undead army are dead, the Nazi atrocities continue. There's only one way to stop the madness. Episode 3, titled Die Führer Die, sees you storming Hitler's bunker during the Third Reich, fighting your way through every Nazi in sight until you kick his head in and spit on his corpse. Again, I mentioned the prequel episodes briefly, and they are titled The Nocturnal Missions and consist of the remaining 3 episodes. In these, BJ is tasked with finding Nazi General Nazi general that, who was planning on using chemical weapons developed by Nazi scientist Otto Giftmacher. By the end of episode 4, Otto is dead at your feet. By the end of 5, you kill Hans' juiced up sister Gretel. And by episode 6, you deliver the general to the afterlife and are awarded a Medal of Honor. How nice. This is when BJ is informed about Operation Eisenfaust and the nefarious activities around Castle Holhammer from the main game, including something about gray-skinned berserk soldiers? Oh, the pistol from the chest is not a hidden compartment. It's literally just a hand holding the gun. I didn't even see that. Huh. Guess they were Nazi zombies. Wolfenstein changed the game back when it was released. It earned for itself the title grandfather of FPS games, years after when the term FPS started being used. It would spawn countless imitators like Nightmare 3D, Pan's Labyrinth, and Terminator Rampage. It would also go on to win a number of awards like Most Innovative Game, Best Entertainment Software, as well as a Cody Award from the Software Publishers Association for Best Action and Arcade Game of 1992. As for how it holds up today, I would say it definitely feels good to play. Mostly, the Steam version has mouse support, but A and D are not used for strafing. They turn BJ around, so you end up with this weird setup where your mouse movements and those two buttons contribute to your camera control. If you grew up with these old control setups, you probably wouldn't have a problem, but for someone like me that grew up on consoles and even still uses a controller for some PC games, it took a bit to get used to. A nitpick I have is the noise that's made when you collide with a wall. It actually was super hard to find footage that I recorded that didn't have that sound in the background, and you probably heard it in some of the clips I used earlier in the video. It was loud compared to every other sound effect and music playing, so you'll be hearing it for the majority of your playthrough. Other than that, I wouldn't really recommend the game to everybody. I would say play it for the novelty of experiencing where the FPS genre truly came to take shape. But anyways, it would never return to the Wolfenstein franchise after this, always working on new titles, one of which I will be covering very soon. But before that, it did release a sort of expansion for Wolfenstein 3D a few months after the original was released for retail markets. That is what we will be looking at on the next episode. See you on the other side.